India's new AI chip strategy just changed everything. Somewhere inside a heavily guarded lab, smaller than a classroom, engineers are racing to finish something that could quietly decide whether India leads the next century or simply watches it happen from the sidelines. That something is not a missile. It is not a satellite. It is a tiny slab of silicon, thinner than a coin, and it may end up mattering more than either of those things ever could. This is an artificial intelligence chip, and right now, a handful of these chips, built almost entirely by 2 or 3 companies on Earth, quietly decide which nations get to build the future and which nations are forced to rent it. The United States controls the design of the most advanced AI chips. Taiwan builds nearly all of them. A single company in the Netherlands builds the machines needed to manufacture them. China is spending fortunes trying to break free of this chokehold. And for years, India, despite training some of the world's best software engineers, stood almost entirely outside this race, buying whatever chips it was allowed to buy on someone else's terms at someone else's price. This was not a small technical gap. Artificial intelligence is quickly becoming the foundation for everything from hospitals to defense systems to national economies. And every single advanced AI model needs one thing above all else to actually run: specialized chips built to handle massive, complex calculations at incredible speed. A nation without its own AI chips is a nation that can be quietly locked out of the most important technology race in human history, no matter how brilliant its programmers are. For years, India's brightest minds built software for the world, while the physical hardware underneath that software was designed and built somewhere else entirely. This dependence was dangerous, and inside India's own strategic circles, it was becoming impossible to ignore. But something has changed, and it has changed with a speed that has surprised even seasoned industry watchers. Quietly, and then very publicly, India has unveiled a new strategy built around one single goal: owning its own artificial intelligence chips from the ground up. Stay till the end, because the final part of this strategy reveals an ambition far bigger than most people realized. To understand why this moment matters so much, we need to understand exactly how deep this weakness once was. Artificial intelligence chips are not like ordinary chips found in a calculator or a washing machine. They're built specifically to perform billions of calculations at once, the exact kind of math needed to train and run modern AI systems, from chatbots to self-driving cars to advanced defense radar. Designing one of these chips requires some of the most advanced engineering knowledge on the planet, and actually manufacturing one requires factories so precise that only a small handful of them exist anywhere in the world. For years, India simply had no serious presence in this space at all. Indian companies and researchers building AI systems had to rent access to these chips from foreign cloud companies, paying enormous sums for computing power that India did not physically own or control. Every major AI breakthrough India wanted to chase, from language models to defense applications, required first asking and often waiting for access to hardware sitting in data centers thousands of miles away. This created a strange and uncomfortable situation. India had brilliant researchers with brilliant ideas, but many of those ideas could not move forward quickly, simply because the physical hardware needed to test them was scarce, expensive, and controlled elsewhere. Global tensions made this weakness even more obvious. When export restrictions tightened around the world's most advanced chips, some countries suddenly found themselves cut off from buying the newest hardware at all, watching helplessly as their AI ambitions stalled overnight. India watched this happen to others and understood with total clarity that the exact same thing could happen here.
Critics, both foreign and domestic, said India was years, maybe even decades behind in this race, and that trying to catch up now was close to hopeless. For a country already fighting hard to build its own semiconductor industry from near zero, adding artificial intelligence chips to that fight seemed, to many, one ambition too many. But what nobody expected was that India was about to launch a strategy that attacked this problem from several directions at once. And this strategy is now beginning to reshape the entire conversation. The first big move was choosing not to wait for the most advanced technology to arrive someday, but to start building expertise immediately with what India already had. The government expanded its national semiconductor mission specifically to include AI chip design, offering direct funding, tax incentives, and fast-track approvals to companies willing to design specialized AI processors inside India. This was a deliberate and clever choice. Rather than trying to instantly match the most advanced chips coming out of the world's richest chip companies, India focused first on chips designed for specific, practical uses, from smart devices to defense electronics to affordable AI systems for classrooms and hospitals. Indian startups that had struggled for years to find serious funding suddenly found government backing behind them, along with introductions to global partners eager to invest in a market of 1.4 billion people. One of the earliest breakthroughs came when an Indian company unveiled the country's first indigenously designed AI processor, a chip built specifically to run artificial intelligence tasks efficiently, using far less power than many of its foreign competitors. This chip was not yet competing with the most cutting-edge chips built abroad, and nobody pretended it was. But it proved something the world had quietly doubted for years, that India could take an idea for an AI chip all the way from a whiteboard sketch to a working physical product. Skeptics said one small chip proved little against a global industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars, but this was only the opening move of a much larger plan. Right alongside this push into chip design, India made a second, equally important move, one aimed at solving the country's most immediate and painful problem: simply having enough computing power to train modern AI systems at all. Instead of waiting years for domestic chip factories to reach full capacity, India launched a massive national effort to build shared AI computing infrastructure, essentially giant clusters of the most advanced chips available, purchased in bulk and made available to Indian researchers, startups, and universities at heavily subsidized rates. This project, built around tens of thousands of high-performance processors, was designed to instantly close the access gap that had been holding back Indian AI research for years. Suddenly, a small startup in a smaller city or a university lab without deep pockets could rent serious computing power at a fraction of what it would cost through foreign cloud providers. This was not the same as building India's own advanced chips, and officials were honest about that difference. But it solved an urgent problem immediately, giving Indian researchers the tools to start building and training powerful AI models right now, while the deeper, harder work of domestic chip manufacturing continued in parallel. Applications for access poured in from across the country, from top research institutions to small startups working on everything from agricultural AI to medical diagnostics. This move alone changed the daily reality for thousands of Indian engineers, turning what was once a frustrating bottleneck into a genuine national resource. At the same time, India made a third move that many observers consider the most strategically important piece of the entire puzzle, quietly working to secure its place inside the actual manufacturing side of advanced chips, not just their design. As global semiconductor investment poured into India's new fabrication plants, officials made a deliberate push to ensure some of this capacity would eventually be capable of producing chips suited for artificial intelligence applications, not just the simpler chips used in cars and appliances. This meant carefully negotiating with global chip equipment makers, the small handful of companies that build the extraordinarily precise machines needed to carve these chips, to bring at least some of that equipment and expertise into India over time. It also meant investing heavily in the specialized materials, from ultra-pure silicon wafers to advanced chemicals that even a finished chip factory cannot function without. This was, without question, the hardest part of the entire strategy, because the most advanced chip manufacturing technology on Earth remains tightly controlled by a small number of nations, guarded as fiercely as any military secret. India did not expect to leap immediately to the very front of this race, and nobody inside the program pretended otherwise. But by building relationships now, training engineers now, and proving its seriousness through real investment now, India positioned itself to be ready the moment more advanced technology became available to share, rather than starting that relationship from zero a decade from now. But the true turning point, the one that ties this entire strategy together, is what all of these efforts are quietly building toward as one connected national mission. India is not simply trying to buy a few AI chips or design one clever processor and call the problem solved. India is trying to build something far more ambitious, a complete and connected AI hardware ecosystem, covering chip design, domestic computing infrastructure, and eventually advanced manufacturing, all working together to reduce India's dependence on any single foreign supplier for the technology powering its future. This is an extraordinarily difficult goal, one that even wealthy, established technology powers are still struggling to fully achieve. It requires universities producing thousands of specialized engineers trained specifically in chip architecture and AI hardware every single year. It requires sustained government funding over many years, without the kind of political shifts that killed similar ambitions in the past. And it requires Indian companies willing to take enormous financial risks on a technology race where the finish line keeps moving further away every single year. India is now building all three of these foundations simultaneously, backed by a level of funding and political urgency that surprised even some of the program's own early skeptics. New specialized research centers focused entirely on AI hardware have opened at India's top technical institutions. State governments are competing to attract chip design startups, offering land, funding, and infrastructure once reserved only for traditional heavy industry. And global technology companies, once content to simply sell finished chips to Indian customers, are now signing partnerships to co-develop future generations of AI processors, specifically with Indian engineers and Indian priorities in mind. This effort matters far beyond ordinary economics, and this is exactly why the world's major technology powers are paying such close attention. Artificial intelligence is no longer a niche technology confined to research labs and phone apps. It sits at the center of modern defense systems, economic forecasting, medical research, and the daily decisions of entire governments. A nation that cannot build or access its own AI hardware can find its most important technological ambitions quietly stalled from the outside, with a single export restriction or a single supply decision made in a boardroom thousands of miles away. This is exactly why the world's most powerful nations treat AI chip access with the same seriousness once reserved for oil pipelines or nuclear fuel, and exactly why India's push into this space is being watched so closely by allies and rivals alike. For years, the world assumed India would remain permanently in the passenger seat of the AI revolution, brilliant at writing the software, but forever dependent on someone else for the hardware underneath it. They watched India's earlier struggles to build even basic semiconductor manufacturing and quietly assumed this far more advanced ambition would remain out of reach for at least another generation. But India kept building anyway, moving on multiple fronts at once instead of waiting for a single perfect solution to appear. This is the same relentless spirit that once built India's own space program, back when the world confidently said India could never compete with wealthier, more established spacefaring nations. The same unshakable spirit that built India's own nuclear capability, back when powerful nations tried for years to isolate India and cut it off from its outside assistance. And now, that very same unstoppable spirit is being poured into silicon wafers and processing cores, into the very chips that will quietly decide how much power a nation truly holds in the decades ahead. This story is still far from finished, and nobody inside India's technology establishment pretends the hardest work is already behind them. Building a complete competitive AI hardware ecosystem will likely take another decade or more, filled with setbacks, expensive failures, and difficult lessons still waiting to be learned along the way. Some projects will succeed and draw genuine global respect, while others may quietly struggle, the same way early attempts at rockets and reactors once did before India finally mastered them. But something fundamental has already shifted in a way that will not be easily reversed. India is no longer a country that simply consumes artificial intelligence built somewhere else on hardware it does not control. India is now a country designing its own chips, building its own computing infrastructure, and slowly working its way into the manufacturing processes that were once completely closed to it. The nation that was once told it could never compete in this race now has its own AI processors running in real devices, its own computing clusters training real models, and its own engineers sitting at the table with the world's largest chip companies. And when the next generation of Indian-designed AI chips finally rolls off a production line built on Indian soil, it will not simply be another piece of technology added to a long list of national achievements. It will be the completion of a strategy years in the making, the strategy that finally allows a nation of 1.4 billion people to stop renting its future from someone else and start building it with its own hands, on its own terms. India is no longer just writing the software for the world's AI revolution. India is now building the very silicon it runs on.